and I think it's the issues for all the small ecosystems. You need one guy that knows how to deal with 200 million clients.
Right.
You need one guy that knows how to scale from $1 million revenue to $100 million revenue.
So JB, thank you for coming and sitting with us to talk about everything Lisbon. You know, you're with Portugal startup scene. Before we jump into a lot of the stuff, give me some of your history. Like how did you get to this point to build, be building incubators and accelerators?
Well, somewhere I did the wrong turn and everything went wrong. I would say no. I'm a frustrated engineer.
Yeah.
So I was trained at university to be an engineer, and soon on, I started to be drawn into consultancy and helping others and helping businesses to grow. So I end up with wide knowledge of all industry, from automotive to doing drugs and pharmaceuticals and in between, and everything that's in the between. After a while, I was moved into corporate startup, so I would build greenfield projects for the devil, for brewery companies and soft drink companies, and I realized that I had moved. I was no longer an engineer.
Right.
I went to study back again to university. Let's get the right skills to what I'm doing. And the guys in university played me a trick. They hired me to build startups from their scientists' ideas. So I would sit with a bunch of scientists, and they will throw ideas that they were researching at the moment, and I will pick up their brains and see, this might be a viable business model. I can sell this to VCs. So I did it. I did it for 1 year, and then my country went into bankruptcy.
Yes.
So we did the third biggest bailout in history. And by then, I realized that if I wouldn't go back, most of the people were leaving, and the ecosystem was getting really depressed. People were doing startups to get their own jobs.
Yeah.
And so I realized that I'm doing this over here, I can do this over there.
Right.
And if people don't come back.
So when that happened, was that a transition point for the tech industry? Was that like one of them?
It was. There's a. You shouldn't say this, but I will say it anyway. There's a good side to a big crisis. At least in my country, this worked really well. People realize that they have to take their destiny in your own hands. The future will happen as it is, and the only way for the future to happen as you wish, you have to design it. You have to take it in your own hands.
Yeah.
So you start to see a lot of people who work for tech companies getting out and building their own startups.
Right.
And people who are getting unemployed, they said, well, I've seen this business model somewhere else. Let me pick it up and build it over here and see how it flies. So we got the pick on startup funding. And some of them were good and survived. Some of them were not good, and they had to reiterate, pivot, and do all those things they do. But it was good in that.
So I was giving you some of my gripes about trying to build ecosystems. Right now, I'm currently building an ecosystem within the Caribbean, and I'm taking my time with finding the right people, the right partners. And within the Caribbean, the mentality is a lot different, right? The mentality, it's people are not building a product to solve a problem. They're building what we call the Me Too product. So they see something that's out there and they do an iterative design on it to say, well, hey, I'm one of in the Caribbean. And the mentality is I'm doing this to make a whole ton of money before looking to actually build a product to actually solve a real problem. And then also on the other side of it, I love the Caribbean, I love my country, but we're all about partying and hanging out. And from a cultural standpoint, it just gets very complacent in that space as well, right? So from your standpoint in kind of building this mechanism within the Portugal space, Lisbon, what have you seen or what has been done from like even a government standpoint to kind of really push the startup spectrum?
So one of the things that we've worked around and realized in the last couple of years is that smaller and more peripheral ecosystems have specific challenges on themselves, but opportunities also for entrepreneurs.
Right.
a lot of the business models don't transfer from the biggest economies to the smaller, which doesn't mean that they're not viable.
Right.
They're just small enough that the big players are not interested. For instance, we don't have eBay in Portugal, and Amazon Web Services is over there, but Amazon, the retailer, is not over there.
Right.
And that creates a lot of business opportunities for people.
Yep.
If they're very lucky, one day they will be bought out by eBay or Amazon, but most likely they are just
and that's a
building
good thing.
startups. They have their own BMW and Mercedes, but most of all, they have cool offices with their friends and programmers they like, and they realize their dream of building a startup and having no bosses.
Yeah.
And that applies to, for the smaller ecosystems, that applies to a lot of sectors. So this is called market innovation. So you look at other markets and you bring to your own market things that you innovate to your market. And you're leaning on technology, which probably it's already cheaper because it has been developed in bigger markets and it's now becoming available. That is something. The other thing is that I oversee Lisbon, but also the rest of the country and the islands. And you see very nice things about what happens in Lisbon, and Lisbon and Oporto are state cities for the ecosystem in the world.
Right.
But you also see a lot of nice things happening around the country in the smaller ecosystems, the tier 2, let's say. And I've seen like the world leader in vaping cigarettes, like the Ferrari, the Bugatti of the thing, it's in Braga. And it's 3 guys in an office who have built a startup out of vaping. And they built Caravella, it's a brand.
So to just jump a little bit, you talk about vaping. So we're in Canada, the biggest place for weed and cannabis. And is Portugal, Lisbon that flexible on?
Portugal, it's pioneered a different policy than what Canada and the US are doing. About 15 years ago, we decriminalized not only weeds and hashish and all that, but we decriminalized all drugs.
Right.
So consumption is not a crime. Dealing is.
Okay.
And that had a huge impact on society because now you don't have people getting arrested for this. So it lowered crime, it lowered social, how do you say it in English? People don't get pushed aside from the society, they have a health issue.
Right.
And the state provides alternative therapies for that in a mild form. You can adopt or not adopt accordingly. So it's a different approach. We are quite happy as a society. So people who do their joints and smoke, they can do them freely as long as they don't identify where they bought them.
I know, right? So going back to the startups, what is the government doing in that space? Like what initiatives are they pushing and are they working and stuff like that? So
it's a wide, vast set of initiatives we developed with the government. We have at the moment about 40 different initiatives on the ground, and we divide them in 3 big axes, which is funding, and we identify where we had problems in each one of them. The other one is ecosystem, how they provide the right knowledge to people and at the right moment, and internationalization. So we realized that we were most successful when we were a global society with people from all over the world moving within our society. So how do you send hours away and how do you bring people from outside in? And so we developed all these different funding structures for seeds. If you are based in Portugal, we will give you 700 euros a month for a year for you to build an idea into a product, and that's a grant, it's for free. Or we will give you money to spend in accelerators and incubators. So we fund the local actors for the accelerator and incubation system, but we also fund you your services that you need, marketing, web page, whatever.
So that's good.
So we develop and we are a startup, so we propose to who decides projects, and we tell them, let's do this in beta. Let's see if it has traction, or if we have to pivot. And that was maybe the biggest accomplishment we got with the politicians. It was for them to save the face and see, we're going to try this and see if it matches our objectives. And if it doesn't match, we are prepared, putting the fault on us, but prepared to pivot and do it again in a different manner. And that's important if you build a smaller ecosystem.
That's interesting. So, and then on the flip side, then how does that in turn transition to helping build skill sets? Because one of the things that I see that we have a problem is while they are skilled people, the skill level hits a bar, right? And then also there's fewer skilled people that are there to kind of build really robust projects. They can build pseudo smaller projects that kind of just tinker with, right? So how does that transition to kind of helping build skill sets within it?
So there's two levels on this, on my perspective. The first level is get your bases sorted out. So everybody that goes through a university in Portugal has entrepreneurship and management on their core courses.
Okay.
All courses, from doctor to lawyer. Everybody gets.
So they teach entrepreneurship as a base level.
6 months course for everybody.
Wow.
Entrepreneurship with a little bit of management knowledge. So you get, lean startup, you know lean, all the new things, business canvas, all these things.
Nice.
As part of your culture. That helps.
Okay.
The second thing is that on your basis still, we know there's a lot of, if you take biology nowadays, and we have a lot of biologists, I don't know why in my country, but you're skilled in math, you're skilled in science, but you don't know how to code. So let's use those people and give the private opportunity, the private initiative, the opportunity to reskill them into becoming coders. A lot of these have become basic developers for a lot of our startups, and that takes care of the basis. So we have a lot of developers. Some of them are trained in universities, some of them have been repurposed as new developers with different degrees.
Right.
But then you have the issue, and I think it's the issues for all the small ecosystems. You need one guy that knows how to deal with 200 million clients.
Right.
You need one guy that knows how to scale from $1 million revenue to $100 million revenue.
Right. You need that pioneer to kind of push in that space.
And you need someone who knows how to deal with a Facebook campaign that will have, or Instagram campaign that will have this volume How do you iterate? How do you change? And most of the times you either do one of two things. You go through the pain of developing those internally, or you go and buy those outside. From our experience, buying those outside, it costs, but it helps a lot. And
so you have initiatives to bring foreign people in that can help boost the ecosystem.
We created a set of visas that you can certify your company. Either you're just coming in, or you are a company that's resident in Portugal, and then you certify your HR procedure, and then you can bring tech people from all over the world. Within 2-3 weeks, you get the visa, and you can bring them in. And that enables companies to bring the best out of the best, even if they only bring them for 6 months or 1 year to sort the issues. And that has a spillover effect on the ecosystem, because once people learn, everybody on the team will have knowledge of how it's done, and they will move to other companies.
It has such a big dynamic effect on everything, right? Because one, you bring in jobs into the space, you create money, the money trail kind of stays in that space as well, but then they live there, and then they actually put that skill level into the system.
To the system. And then, then you're starting like, the first company we had with more than 15 million active users was Aptoid a couple of years ago. And they changed because the team that was able to build that amount of users, they now have 200 million users. And this is the skill set we didn't have 5 years ago. And we needed one entrepreneur to acknowledge this was the way to go, to invest. But then it was also important that he was humble enough and conscious enough that he should share that with the rest of the community. And
where do you see the future of what you guys are doing in Startup Portugal, and how do you want to push for the next big thing that's going to happen?
So we've working developing the ecosystem. So our future it will be the same thing that we do nowadays, which is solving the problems of everyday's entrepreneur. The problems will change. I see the problems changing. We're seeing more and more complexity in what people are trying to achieve. And we see more and more speed in terms of what is the technology consumers are embracing. So
Right.
we had the social network for 10 years, and now we're changing social network platform every 5 years, and it will come to 2, to 1, and
Yeah.
the Talk, which is the new thing the kids are picking up.
Correct,
It's well, it popped up. How long does it going to last? Because we don't know.
Exactly.
So, and that creates a new way to approach. So how do you reskill yourself every year? How do you reskill yourself every 6 months? And how do you train people
To kind of adapt.
to embrace that?
It's getting everyone to adapt an agile mindset.
And how do you plan for that uncertainty in the future? So,
Yeah, I agree. Well, JB,
yeah.
thank you so much
Nice to
for
meet
coming
you,
up.
Fabian.
It was awesome talking to you.
Just give us a shout.
Yeah, man, and we hang out.
Well, you will be welcome in my city.
Awesome.